And welcome to our session today about the Survivor Benefit Plan. So, my name is Heather Walrath. I am an accredited financial counselor with the Navy Mutual Aid Association. So, perhaps you've heard of us, right, for the insurance side of the house. What you might not know is that we're a referral source within the Department of Defense community with regards to survivor benefits. So we do a lot of instruction on installations about the DoD Survivor Benefit Plan, trying to inform retirees about their options within the program. And there are a lot of myths about this program. So, what we want to do today is take some time to kind of debunk some of that one size fits all myths about the survivor benefit plan. So, our service members who are facing this decision can truly make an informed decision. So, again, my name is Heather. I'm a financial counselor here at Navy Mutual, part of our Education and Veteran Services program. We are the oldest federally recognized veteran service organization in the country. So, aside from the excellent insurance opportunities that we have, we also provide personal financial education and assistance with VA disability claims. So, if there's anything we can do to help you on that side of the house, please don't hesitate to reach out. I am an accredited financial counselor and also a military qualified financial planner. Plus, what I think is most important, a military spouse. And my husband and I just had to navigate this decision personally when he retired from the service after 26 years this past January. So let's jump in a little bit and talk about exactly what is SBP or the Survivor Benefit Plan. Well, service members who serve 20 years are very fortunate to be able to receive a pension from the Department of Defense. This pension starts the very next month that they leave active duty and retirement and lasts the rest of their life. However, when they die, that pension ends. Unless before they retire, when so many things are swirling around that you have to make decisions about, a member chooses to continue their coverage under the survivor benefit plan. So, how do you decide whether or not this is the best plan for you, especially when you're having to make this decision through a very stressful time as you transition from the service? So, we'll talk about that. Now, remember that the survivor benefit plan is just a piece of your financial planning puzzle. So, there are many sources of income for your survivors once you pass away. And none of them were actually designed to provide 100% of the income that your survivors might need. But understanding what you might have available to you and how all those can work together could provide some significant benefits. So, we're going to talk about the slice of the pie called the Survivor Benefit Plan today. So, I would challenge you to think about how that might come into play with other benefits that you might have from Social Security, investments, insurance, income, or potentially any benefits that you might get from the department or the Veterans Affairs for any type of disability compensation or survivor benefits there for your survivors if you're a disabled veteran. So that's a very different program. That is something completely separate from the survivor benefit plan as well. So let's just kind of do the nuts and bolts of SBP. So, again, this is the only way that a portion of a military retirement continues upon the service member's death. So, the way this works is at retirement, the member chooses if they want to participate and how much of their retirement they want to cover. And that amount can be anywhere from $300 up to their full gross monthly retirement. And that's what we call the elected amount for SBP purposes. Then, to cover a spouse under the program, you do pay a premium. Okay, for spouse coverage, it costs 6.5% of that elected amount. Then, when the member passes away, the benefit that's left is 55% of their elected amount. So, even if a member wants to cover their entire retirement under the survivor benefit plan, the most that surviving spouse is going to get is 55%. The benefits are taxable, just like a military retirement pay is taxable federally. Some states may not tax it, but federally it's taxed. However, the premiums that you use to pay that are deducted from your retirement are not taxable. So that does help to reduce your taxable income somewhat in retirement. Another important feature of the SBP program is that just like a military retirement check, the benefit is also COLA protected. Now, this is not the COLA that you might have gotten on active duty for a high cost of living area, like you lived in Hawaii or you lived in Europe. This is the annual cost of living increase that Congress typically authorizes that hits in January. So, for example, if the COLA increase is 3.2%, all the retirees get an additional 3.2% for that upcoming year. So do all of their survivors. So, I think that is significant because that allows this benefit to keep up with inflation. Okay, so that's kind of the nuts and bolts of the costs and benefits. Child cost is a little bit different, and we'll talk about that. So, who can be an eligible beneficiary? Well, first of all, what's interesting to understand is if a member is married at the time of their retirement, this technically is not the member's decision. The decision actually belongs to the spouse. Because what happens is the default is going to be that the spouse or that the member is enrolled in the program with their whole retirement covered. If they want to do something different, like perhaps they don't want to participate at all, or maybe they want to participate, but they want to cover a lesser amount of their retirement, that requires the spouse to sign the form and their signature must be notarized. So this is not something that a member can do as they're walking out the door for their final out processing appointment. All right, because essentially this is a benefit for the spouse. And if the benefit is going to be declined, the spouse needs to be informed. Now, for a spouse, the benefit is for life. If that spouse lives to be 110, they will get a COLA adjusted monthly income for the rest of their life. However, if they remarry before age 55, the benefit is suspended. If that marriage ends in death or divorce, they could resume the benefit. But if anyone remarries after 55, there will be no interruption in the benefit. Now, I have a category listed here, spouse or former spouse. Only one can get the benefit. Whether or not a former spouse is the beneficiary really depends on the divorce decree. Okay, there's no rule within DOD like you were married 10 of the 20 years, 20 of the 20 years. There's rules about other things like perhaps keeping TRICARE coverage, keeping base access. But whether or not a former spouse is an SBP beneficiary depends on the language of the divorce decree. And if a member is required to cover a former spouse and they're married to someone else at the time of retirement, they cannot cover that current spouse. It can only be one or the other. Now, there's also options to cover children. Children can only be a beneficiary until age 18 or 22 if they're enrolled in school, unless a member has a disabled child. And in this context, that word disabled is defined as being incapable of self support. So if you have a child that is determined to be incapable of self support while they're age eligible, they have the benefit for life. They will never age out. So that is a very significant benefit for anyone with a special needs child to have that benefit for life. Also, for a special needs child, it can be put into a special needs trust, an S&T, which is very important because that protects that income and allows them to continue to get other benefits that might be income dependent, like Social Security or Medicaid. Okay, so very, very important for that S&T. Now, the options are to enroll a spouse, to enroll a spouse and child, or child only. That spouse and child coverage means the spouse is the primary beneficiary, children are secondary if the spouse is not eligible. So let's say perhaps both the member and the spouse die in a car accident, or they get divorced, it's not in the divorce decree, or the spouse remarries before age 55. All of those things make the spouse ineligible, but if the children are still in that age eligibility window, they would get the benefit. So spouse and child is either the spouse gets the benefit or it goes to the child. Child only benefit is only paid to a child if the child is still eligible. Now, there's one more category, not very common, but there is something called an insurable interest. That is only available if the member has no spouse or children at the time of retirement. Technically, they could do it if it's a single parent of one child, but insurable interest is quite expensive. Was designed more for a scenario of maybe you take care of mom, right? Or you've got a business partner that relies on your income. The insurable interest beneficiary, the cost for that is 10 to 40% of the retirement pay. So it's much more expensive. That range depends on the age of that beneficiary. So for a child, it's going to be the 40%, parent probably 10. All right. So if anyone has specific questions about that category, just reach out. We're not going to do a real deep dive into that today because it's not a very common option. So here are some cost and benefit examples. Now, there is an additional cost for the children. It is very insignificant. The actual cost is based on the amount that's elected and the age of the youngest child at the time of retirement. So let's just look at a few examples here. The $2,000 elected amount. These numbers come from the DoD actuary site. They're the ones that set the premiums for the SBP program. So in this scenario, we have a member and a spouse who are both 42 at the age of this election, so at the age of retirement. So if they're electing to cover $2,000 of retirement, that's going to cost $130 to cover the spouse, right? An additional 26 cents to add on the kids if the kids are if the youngest child is 8. Okay. Now, again, they could have an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, but the premium is just going to be based on the age of the youngest child. So if the youngest is 8, it's an additional 26 cents. Okay. If the youngest is 16, it's an additional 6 cents. Right. Because the reality is, if you have a 16-year-old, they probably won't get the benefit. And if they do, for a very small amount of time, right? Because they're going to age out. If you want to do child only coverage, not cover the spouse, only $4.80 if you have the youngest is 8, only $1.80 if the youngest is 16. And then the benefit, of course, would be 1100. That's based off of 55% of that elected amount of 2000. So you can see the cost varies a little bit as we move up in the elected amount. But overall, across the board, child add on is very inexpensive. So, that's one question that I always want to bring up when someone's making this decision. Do you have a child? Right. And, I think that's important because things could happen with our children. So let's say, God forbid, you sign up for the kids, they have an accident, right? While they're still age eligible that leaves them disabled, then they have the benefit forever. Okay. Now, chances are we'll keep our fingers crossed. I'm a mom, right? Think about these things. The kids are going to age out, right? Well, then you only paid, a few dollars for that what if scenario. Okay. But that is an option. And people don't realize that there is a difference between covering a spouse and the cost and covering the children. So that's just a general overview. Again, you can always reach out with specifics. Now, the other part of this is determining the value of the benefit, right? Now, the main reason that we can never have this SBP decision be a one shoe fits all is because the benefit is different for everyone, right? So the benefit is based on your retirement. Everyone's retirement is different because it's based on your pay grade and years of service. So if someone is basing their decision off of what someone else did, they might have had a completely different benefit. All right. So that is very important. And one of my favorite tools, again, is the DoD actuary site. So there's a screenshot there on the bottom right of the screen that shows you what the website looks like. They have some very easy to use Excel based tools to help you run these scenarios. But bottom line, you do have to pay premiums for 30 years and until age 70. Okay, so if a member's retiring at 45, they pay until age 75. This is assuming they still have an eligible beneficiary. If the spouse were to pass away before they've completed those 30 years, premiums would stop. Okay, but let's say, best case really, you pay 30 years because that means the spouse and the member are still alive. At that point, the spouse only has to outlive the member about 2.5 years to get back all the money that they paid in premiums. And the reason that break even point is pretty low is because this program is heavily subsidized by DoD. Now, I do just want to pause and say I am mentioning DoD Office of the Actuary, DoD subsidizing this. Our Coast Guard brothers and sisters, our brothers and sisters, U.S. Public Health Service, they also fall under the Survivor Benefit Program. Whereas those three do not fall under DoD traditionally, right, for operational purposes, they do for this program. So if you're a member of one of those services, and I'm saying DoD, it still does apply to you in the context because DoD manages this program. So here is an example of the value of the benefit. Okay, so this is a snapshot of the DoD actuary calculator. Okay, and this is an elected amount of $3,000. And it does account for tax brackets, inflation rates, interest rates. Those are all adjustable within the calculator. So on the left there is what this example shows. If you don't think they're appropriate, you can change them. So as we look across, you'll see the year is 2043. That represents the year the member passes away. At that point, if we follow it over, they've paid in $45,256 into SBP. However, the first year, that surviving spouse would get a benefit of $25,152. Okay. Now let's assume that COLA increase gets the benefit up to 26,000 for the year 2044. So before they've even received 2 years of benefits, they've also gotten back all the money that they paid into premiums. Okay. This blue number on the right is the potential lifetime value of the benefit based on life expectancies. Okay. So this is where I think it's very important for anyone that's entering into this decision to understand their number. Because in theory, the idea is if you decide you're not going to do the survivor benefit plan, where else do you have potentially $600,000 available to your spouse over the rest of their life? Maybe that's other assets, maybe that's insurance, other income sources, but this is the number that you would really need to compare that type of benefit to. And then this is just an example of a $6,000 elected amount, right? So kind of same following it over, you can see those numbers, but that's a $1 million benefit, right? So again, very different benefit scenarios, and you need to understand the value of the benefit when making the decision. Okay, so these actuary calculators are great tools. So we kind of went through the nuts and bolts of the program. Now, I will say the regulation on the survivor benefit plan is 67 pages long. So there's a lot to it that we didn't get to in the last 10 minutes overview. So if you do have specific, unique questions, we're always here at Navy Mutual to go over those with you. But now that we've kind of gotten the basics of the program out of the way, what needs to be considered as you're making this decision? Okay. So if you are a financial counselor helping someone, it's important to be knowledgeable about the program. If you are a service member or a spouse making this decision, it's important to be knowledgeable about the program to assess your situation. And then we can point you to these vetted resources, the DoD actuary site, the calculators, right? So you can really make an informed decision. It is never my intention to tell anyone what to do, right? But my goal is to make sure you understand the program and the questions to ask so that you can make an informed decision. So, first, I will ask you to think, what is your number? And what do I mean by that? Well, if the service member were to pass away today, what is the number that the family needs to continue to receive in income every month to maintain their same standard of living? Okay, what is your number? And then how would you accomplish that? Would it be through other assets you already have saved? Would it be through life insurance? Does a survivor have the ability to continue to work? How do you want to accomplish that number? So, again, just like the value of SBP is important to understand, every individual person and family has their own number of what they need and how they're going to accomplish that. So that's what you want to think about is if I lost this retirement, would I be okay with other resources? And if the answer is yes, maybe you don't need to do SVP. If the answer is no, that would have a significant impact. Maybe the next question is, how much do we want to cover of that retirement? Do we want to cover the whole amount or could we do a reduced amount? So, what is the number? So, the second thing I would say is, what is the survivor's ability to earn an income? All right. Now, I was a military spouse for 26 years. I mean, I still am, right? Even though we're retired. But the reality is, for probably a good 20 years, maybe 15 years, I did not work full time. Okay, I did part time, I did volunteer work, but we had kids, right? There was no childcare. We had 10 deployments, right? So I, really did not have a lot of income my own during those periods. I did not, have a lot of retirement savings through my employer. And many military spouses have gaps in their work history. They can make it difficult to get a job providing that same level of income that their retiree spouse did, right? So if the member passed away and had no more retirement income, does that surviving spouse have the ability to replace that income on their own? Right. So that's an important consideration, right? Because again, lots of military spouses have those gaps in their history that doesn't allow them to have the same earning potential. So the other question that we need to consider is the member insurable? Okay. A lot of people want to say SBP or life insurance. And I think it's not necessarily an either or, but an and, right? Because let's think about this. Here is a member's base pay right here. We're not talking about the extra housing allowances. We're not talking about specialty pays, flight pays, just the base pay. Then the retirement is going to be half of that. Maybe a little bit more, right? Depending on how long you stayed in. Well, SBP isn't half of that. So we're talking about 25, maybe 30% of the base pay. So for most people, whereas this is a very valuable benefit with that inflation protector and lifetime opportunity, it may not be enough. So what do you supplement that with? And that's where life insurance can come into play, right? Life insurance, differences there, depending when it pays out, no guarantee how long it's going to last, right? A survivor could outlive that life insurance money. Also, there's typically no inflation protector with life insurance, right? So, if you get $500,000 of life insurance today, it's worth 500,000. If you get that in 30 years, it's not worth $500,000 because of inflation. Okay. But many people just assume as they transition from the military, they can get more life insurance. Well, the reality is that life insurance gets more expensive as we get older. And then as you start adding health conditions on top of that, you might find that you cannot get life insurance because there is typically an underwriting process for commercial life insurance, meaning you have to disclose medical information, medications, diagnosis, and based on that, they determine whether or not they will insure you. So, unfortunately, I have had members retiring with cancer. They can't get additional commercial life insurance. Now, luckily, there is a VGLI program, but that can be quite expensive, right? It only provides up to $500,000 coverage, but they also can apply for or can qualify for SBP. So, regardless of the health, SBP is guaranteed. So, if the member's intent is, to not do SBP because they're going to get life insurance, they need to make sure that they are insurable, right, before they close the door on SBP forever. Okay. Because you only have that small window before you retire to make this decision. There's not an opportunity later to go back and change your mind. Very limited circumstances for that. So, is the member insurable? If not, this could be a very valuable benefit. All right. So, does the member have an eligible child? Okay, remember we talked about already that the SBP cost is significantly less for child only and protects the family if the child were to become disabled. So perhaps the family decides that they don't need to do spouse coverage because the spouse is employed, they have their own income, they feel like that spouse is employable, could make up for that income loss, right? But remember that child cost was very insignificant. So maybe you pay $5, $8 to cover the children. God forbid the child becomes disabled while they're eligible. That benefit lasts for life. If the child does not become disabled, which most of them will not, once they age out, there's no more premium paid. So it's a very small amount of time to pay a very small premium, but to have that protection just in case. So again, there's a lot of confusion out there. Some people think the child cost is the same as the spouse cost, so they just want to decline the program completely. Don't realize that child only is a significant savings. So here's another just kind of money personality question to consider. What is the money management capability of your survivor? Okay. I had a service member tell me one time, my spouse is amazing. I would not be here without him. He supported my whole career. You managed the home front, amazing. But he doesn't have the best money management skills. So I'm kind of worried that if he got a lump sum 500,000 of life insurance, might go through that really quickly. So I kind of like, the idea that this money would come every month, kind of a fresh start. I think that would work better with their money management capabilities, right? So that's a consideration, right? Also, sometimes I've heard people say, I think mathematically we're okay. If everything falls in line the way I've set it up with investments, cash, bonds, different cash flow strategies, we should be okay. But what if it doesn't? What if something happens in the economy and everything drops off? What if we go to war? All these what ifs, right? So I want to take it because that helps me sleep at night. No matter what these other things happen that I maybe not be able to control, we've got this benefit, right? So some of it is a little bit of what helps you sleep at night and your money personality. But those are very significant considerations, right? When we're identifying our money styles. What other inflation adjusted income sources does the member have? Right. And we just kind of talked about that a little bit. Maybe you have a plan and you've got assets and you feel comfortable with that, but we don't know what happens, right? The market goes up and down. And of course, when the market goes down and we're younger, it's okay, right? Because we're buying on sale. Great. But if the market drops to 80, that could significantly affect our plan, right? So if everything else that you have is connected to market fluctuations, this could add some stability in there, right? To help calm the waters if the rest of your plan that you can't control gets a little adjusted, right? So that's important to consider. If you have other sources of income, how does it adjust with inflation? How does it handle inflation? Hopefully we don't continue having inflation as high as we have the past couple of years, but there's always going to be some sort of inflation, right? And that is one benefit of SBP, that it's built into the program to adjust with that inflation. So here's another one that we military families kind of tend to put our head in the sand about: long-term care. Now, the reality is that 75% of us are going to need long-term care. Now, one amazing thing about being a military retiree is that you have TRICARE, you have healthcare coverage. When you turn 65, you have to take Medicare. Medicare becomes your primary health insurance, TRICARE is then your secondary. Okay, so you have great healthcare insurance between the two, but neither of those programs cover long term care needs. So, how would you pay for that? Right? So the retiree has that pension for the rest of their life that could be used to care for long-term care. If a surviving spouse has the SBP benefit, that's money coming in every month that could be used for long-term care, right? So that is a consideration, right, that we want to think about of how we would pay for that. Um, SBP may not be enough for the survivor, but at least it's something. For our veterans that have a service connected disability, there may be some VA long term care programs if that member is enrolled in VA healthcare. However, even if the veteran qualifies, remember spouses do not. Spouses do not fall under that program for long term care benefits. Now, Perhaps there's some state benefits, right, depending where you live, but overall, things are not going to apply to spouses. So, need to kind of think about that, in terms of funds available for that type of care. Now, medical retiree. This is a little bit different situation. Okay. So we need to approach this a little bit differently. So, medical retirees with less than 20 years do not get concurrent receipt of both their VA disability benefit and their military retirement. Okay. They have to choose one or the other. In many cases, the VA benefit is higher and it is not taxable. So the retiree might decide, I'm going to waive my DoD retirement, take my VA compensation. However, they could still sign up for the survivor benefit plan. So even though they are not receiving their retirement from the service, if they passed away, their family could receive a portion of it. Why would they want to do that? Well, VA money, just like DoD money, any VA disability compensation money that a veteran gets ends when they die. It does not continue for their spouse. All right. Unless the veteran's death was service connected, or if they're at 100% rating for a specific amount of time, then there might be a benefit the spouse is eligible for called dependency indemnity compensation, or DIC. Right? It's a little easier to say DIC. However, that's a flat rate. For example, this year, 2023, that rate was 1563, flat rate. Okay. Maybe if the veteran was 100% disabled, they had a benefit of $4,000 a month while they were alive. Died from a service connected condition, spouse qualifies, but the spouse gets 1563. So it's $2,500 less, right? So that might be why they would want to do survivor benefit plan. So then more money would kick in to supplement that. Also, no guarantees that a surviving spouse would get DIC, right? There's a lot of variables there. So can't necessarily rely on that because they have to be eligible. SBP, you sign up, you're going to get the benefit. There's no variables to consider. Okay. So this is very confusing for medical retirees because they think, well, I'm not collecting my DoD retirement, so I wouldn't be eligible, but they are. I won't go down the rabbit hole of how you determine what their retirement is, but their SBP decision is based off of their DoD retirement, not any offsets or anything like that. So again, if you're a medical retiree and you have questions about that, please reach out and we'll do a deeper dive into that situation. But the SBP benefit is available. So this just talks a little bit about how that retirement is calculated. The website for a disability retirement, it's either calculated the regular way, years of pay times your multiplier, 2.5 or 2.0, depending which retirement system you're under, times the average of the highest 36-month pay. Okay, that's the regular way. Medical retirees could also use their DoD rating. That's different from their VA rating. So when you're a medical retiree, you typically have two ratings, one from the VA, one from DoD. They may not be the same thing. So they could also use their DoD rating. So let's say that the DoD rating was 50% and they were only in 10 years. Well, if they use the regular way, 10 years times 2.5, that's 25%. But if they use the 50% DoD medical rating, then they can do 50% times the average highest 36 months. However, the cap is 75%. So even if a medical retiree has a DoD rating of 100%, the max is 75% of the average highest 36 months. So again, that's in the weeds a little bit, but that's how you figure out what your DoD retirement compensation would be to base that SBP decision off of. All right. So here's that scenario broken down for you. So if you're a visual learner, so Joe is an E7 being medically retired after 14 years at age 32. His VA rating is 100% and his DoD rating is 80%. So you see, they're not the same. So what is his DoD retirement amount that he's eligible for? Okay, for SBP. So in this scenario, the average of his highest 36 months pay is $5,000. Okay. If we did that service multiplier way, right? 14 years times 2.5%, 35%. If we use the DoD multiplier using 80%, the rating is 75. Because remember, the highest it can be is 75. All right. So in that case, it's better to use 75% than 35%, right? By a lot. So his retirement is 75% of the average highest 36 months. So 75% of 5,000 is 3750. So 3750 would be the max SBP election amount. So if you want to cover your full medical retirement, 3750 benefit would be 55% of that. However, remember I pointed out that these premiums for spouse coverage have to be paid for 30 years and until the age of 70. So Joe is only 32 when he is retiring, right? So he's going to have to pay 38 years of premiums because he has to get to age 70. So that's another consideration for a medical retiree because they're going to have to pay premiums potentially longer. Maybe not, right? Because we don't know when we're going to pass away, but they could potentially live longer and have to pay more premiums because they have to attain the age of 70 before those premiums stop. So if your mind is spinning with medical retirees, I hear you, right? Done this a lot. So I think my brain is processing a little bit more. But again, just reach out because this is a quite complicated topic, but something that we need to be aware of. So already talked a little bit, SVP versus life insurance. And again, I don't think that question should be either or, but and in many cases. Right? Because again, we're talking about, you know, combining different sources of money. We're talking about the fact that that SBP payment is so much less than what anyone is used to getting right now, particularly if they're still on active duty, right? On active duty, you got your base pay plus your BAH and all those other things, right? Retirement's only off the base pay, right? And the SBP is half of that. So considerably less than what you might be used to. But combined with other things, it could be a very substantial benefit, right? So, what would you supplement SBP? Perhaps life insurance. Okay. So, don't go down that rabbit hole of either or, right? But maybe and. How could these things work together, right? Apples and oranges, different benefits here. So, we talked about a lot of these, the way the things are different, right? Taxability of premiums, taxability of benefits, COLA increases, insurability, right? I will say one big criticism that I agree with about SBP is, well, what if I pay, 30 years into this and then my spouse passes away? Nobody gets that benefit, right? Goes into the system to pay somebody else's benefit, right? Now, if that member were to remarry, they could extend it to a new spouse, okay? But chances are, yes, no one's going to get that benefit. Whereas insurance, if the spouse passes away and they were the beneficiary of a life insurance policy, you can just change the policy beneficiary to somebody else. Change it to your kids, your grandkids, your cousin, your boyfriend, right? So there's a little bit more flexibility in the beneficiary. Okay. But part of that goes back to, what do you view life insurance? Is it to protect income or to leave a legacy, right? Kind of two different things. And again, insurability. So for many people, a combination might be appropriate. Maybe you take some SBP to get that guaranteed income for life. You get some term with it to get the kids out of the house, pay the mortgage. You get some whole life, right? So you've got some cash value accrual, accelerated death benefit options that a lot of whole life policies have. So you can use all these things together, right? What's the best combination for you to accomplish that number? So again, a lot of this decision is about what helps you sleep at night, right? That financial freedom, everybody might take a slightly different path to get there to the top of the mountain where they can really feel free. Okay. So we need to be careful if you're another financial educator about, inserting our emotions into things, right? Because everybody feels a little bit differently about money and what's going to help them sleep at night. But the point here is to have correct information. If you have correct information, then you can make an informed decision and you can sleep well at night. But if you feel like you didn't quite understand the program, you didn't have all of the complete information, that's what makes us second guess ourselves and our choices, right? So let's give you the correct information. So again, there's many factors, right? I want everyone to consider the value of the benefit. Everything is different. You can choose to take a reduced amount of your benefit if you feel like you have other things that would supplement, right? The DoD actuary site has great tools to help you evaluate the costs and benefits, and peace of mind could be invaluable, right? Maybe that's not a tangible dollar amount to put on there, but invaluable, in terms of what gives you peace. Everyone needs to evaluate their income needs. That is different for everyone. What do you envision retirement to be like? How are you going to pay for that? SBP is just one tool, to provide income, and it can be combined with other tools. But remember that VA disability compensation does not continue for survivors. There's a different benefit. DIC has different qualifications, but in most cases, even if the survivors get DIC, it's less. It's less than the veteran had when they were alive. Consider long term care needs. How would you fund those? And then special situations. How does a survivor manage money? Does the member have children? Do the children have special needs? Is the member able to get life insurance? Right? And if it's a medical retiree, they're going to pay likely more years of premiums. So all of these things factor into the decision. So I hope that I've given you some tools today that you can think about. If you are a transitioning service member, that you feel informed about using these tools to make your decision. If you are another service provider that is out there helping others make these decisions, hope we've given you some tools, right, for them to consider. So, again, this is not a one and done. Please reach out to me or my team if there's anything that we can do to help you feel comfortable and informed with your decision. As the country's oldest federally recognized VSO, we really feel passionate about helping you navigate your benefits and get all of your entitlements. So I hope you found this helpful. I look forward to hearing from you, and congratulations on your upcoming retirement if that is the next chapter for you. So take care.